So another one of the losers that I was very, very happy to see lost was Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris is somebody that was, she was being fawned over. She's always been kind of fawned over ever since she's came into the Senate in 2016. But when she decided to run for president, everybody was falling over themselves, coming all over themselves. Oh my God, Kamala Harris is so fucking amazing. She's so wonderful. She's so this, she's so that. What policies did they support for her? Who knows? They just loved her because she's a woman of color and she's a woman and she's a Democrat and she sounds really inspiring and she's a prosecutor, which to progressives is ridiculous because she's basically a cop. But to the other people out there, the Democrat loyalists essentially, she's like, oh, she's so strong, she's so powerful, and she's so, the way she does, the way she makes her statements, she sounds so strong, and she's totally going to be able to take on Trump, and she's gonna steamroll him because he's a weak little bitch, and then she's going to be able to show how strong a woman can be when taking on Donald Trump. Apparently that didn't work out too well for Hillary Clinton, who basically had the same mentality, and which shows that obviously it's the policies that matter, stupid, not the fucking gender or skin color or anything like that, or let alone the profession, being a prosecutor. Who gives a fuck? But anyway, so she was asked about the issue of free trade during the debate, and she gave a ridiculous take here. I wanted to play this for you guys, and why don't you check this out, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Senator Harris, how would your trade policy differ from President Obama's?
Well, first of all, I have no criticism of that more than just looking at where we are now, which is that we've got a guy in the White House who has been erratic on trade policy. He conducts trade policy by tweet, frankly, born out of his fragile ego. It has resulted in farmers in Iowa with soybeans rotting in bins, looking at bankruptcy. When we look at this issue, my trade policy under a Harris administration is always going to be about saying we need to export American products, not American jobs. And to do that, we have to have a meaningful trade policy. I am not a protectionist Democrat. Look, we need to sell our stuff, and that means we need to sell it to people overseas. That means we need trade policies that allow that to happen. You asked earlier about China. It's a complicated relationship. We have to hold China accountable. They steal our products, including our intellectual property. They dump substandard products into our economy. They need to be held accountable. We also need to partner with China on climate and the crisis that presents. We need to partner with China on the issue of North Korea. I am on, and I think the only person on this stage, the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Homeland Security Committee. We need a partner on the issue of North Korea. But the bottom line is this: Donald Trump, in office on trade policy, he reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
Okay. I'm not even going to take the bait, Senator Harris.
Yeah, real funny. I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. I haven't seen The Wizard of Oz since I was like 5 years old, so I have no idea what the fuck she's saying. I guess she's saying that Donald Trump has a small man syndrome. I guess, I don't know. He's a pretty tall guy, so I mean, I guess deep down he does have a kind of an inferiority complex, and but I mean, yeah, that's a typical terrible Democrat response there. And first of all, she says, "Oh, I'm not a protectionist Democrat." Because I don't believe in, I totally want to keep jobs in the United States. And then look at the beginning. She says, I don't disagree much with what President Obama was doing on this issue. Okay, so, but you're saying the same exact things as any other Democrat would say. You're not saying anything about about for example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership that existed under President Obama, or at least he was pushing. He luckily never got implemented. This was something that Bernie Sanders was fighting really hard against, and she's basically saying like, oh no, I don't disagree with anything that Obama did on trade. So what are you doing? So how are you pushing for something that's different? But that's the thing. She's not pushing for anything that's different. She's pushing for the same kind of bullshit, the same kind of, neoliberal, corporatist, centrist ideas. And, when she goes, so she's trying to make this whole issue about Trump. And by the way, throughout the debate, she was trying to make this whole thing about Trump. I think out of all the candidates that were running, and even the candidates that say we need to defeat Donald Trump, out of all the candidates that were, mentioning Trump, she was by far the one that was focusing on them the most, and it made zero sense. And I mentioned on Twitter during the debate, why do you keep mentioning Donald Trump? You're not running against Donald Trump yet. You're running in a primary, and this is somebody that claimed after Tulsi Gabbard called her out and destroyed her on her pathetic, basically fascist prosecutorial record when she was Attorney General, and when she was DA in San Francisco, Tulsi Gabbard called her out, and then after the debate, when they were asking her about what Tulsi Gabbard was saying as far as like Tulsi's criticism of her, she was like, "Oh, I'm a top tier candidate," and all the people that aren't in the same position in the polls, essentially aren't in the same tier as I am, they're going to try and come after the big dogs. Well, guess what's happening now, Kamala? You're diving big time. You're diving big time in the polls right now. She's like down to like, I think 6 or 7% in a lot of polls. Before she was, I think somewhere in the 13, 14%. So she's dropped by at least 50% in the polls. And again, like I said at the beginning of the segment, everybody was fawning over her from the beginning of this segment. I'm sorry, since the beginning of this primary, let alone even before that, before she even declared they were loving Kamala Harris. So, but she goes in there and she gives like zero details. She mentions everything about, oh, this is what Trump's doing bad. This is what Trump's doing bad. This Trump, he negotiates our trade policies based on tweet. It's like she's trying to come up with these one-liners, and then you can see that she tried to do that at the end, mentioning the whole Wizard of Oz thing and pulling the curtain, and it's a small guy or whatever. Like, you're not edgy. You're not saying anything that's fascinating anybody. You're just saying a bunch of things that you think like the millennials are like they're totally gonna love, and like honestly mentioning Wizard of Oz is it's so old school. Like, that's Wizard of Oz is a terribly old movie. I mean, even like I said, I haven't watched that movie since I was a little kid, but it's still like it's a movie from like the 40s or 50s? I mean, I don't know why she's even bringing that up, but she's trying to come up with like these one-liners, like these zingers to get at Trump, so as to like so I think what she wants to do is she wants to get Trump's attention so that he tweets about her, and then it creates like some sort of like Twitter firestorm, and then everybody's talking about Kamala Harris. So she wants to get attention by goading Trump, by kind of poking him and prodding him, and then hoping that he'll respond. And then if he doesn't respond, I mean, I guess she figures, well, whatever, I tried. But honestly, that's not going to make you look much better, because you're not going out there and putting out any kind of substance. You're not putting out any kind of ideas. And throughout the debate, she was constantly just like looking ridiculous. There was another part of the debate where she actually got Tulsi'd by the one of the moderators, one of the female moderators. And honestly, if you put Tulsi up next a picture next to Tulsi next to this female moderator, they almost looked alike. It almost looked like it was Tulsi at that, sitting there, asking her these questions, because she was bringing up Kamala's prosecutorial record and her time as, district attorney and stuff. And she was nailing her, and Kamala had zero response in that. She just went out there and said, "Oh yeah, my record has always been in favor of helping people that need to be helped, and stand up for people, and I believe in the law, and under a Kamala Harris whatever presidency or administration, I'm going to be standing up for everybody. Yeah, like you don't even mention anything about the time that you as Attorney General, you locked up people, locked up, I think, a lot of black men. Actually, you locked up black men for smoking weed, for I think in many cases even selling marijuana. You held what was it? You refused to disclose information from certain cases from people that were on death row. You got certain types of information about somebody that was being accused of a crime, and then you refused to hear it, and then you kept that person, in jail or on whatever death row or whatever it was, but you refused to listen to evidence, literal evidence that's brought to you. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do as a lawyer and a prosecutor. You're supposed to look at evidence and then make a decision. Okay, this is, I'm going to make this decision, or I'm going to decide whether to prosecute or not prosecute, based on the evidence that I have here. She refused to take a lot of the evidence that she was given because she wanted to, I don't know, I guess in her mind, she was being tough on crime, and she wanted to make it seem as if she was doing something that people would be like totally like, wow, good job. You're a tough, negotiator, and you're a tough, you're going after the bad guys, and this is something that Kamala mentioned. What was it? I think Kamala or maybe one of her supporters mentioned it. She's like, oh, this is a tough, it is really tough to be a prosecutor because you're supposed to take the mentality of being a tough woman, because there's so many tough men out there that expect you to be tough, and they don't want you to be easy on anybody. Okay, then why did you become a prosecutor then? There's a million jobs out there that you could have taken. Why did you go to decide to become a prosecutor? Why don't you become a defense attorney? You could have become a defense attorney. Granted, you could have, there's issues with becoming a defense attorney too. You're defending mass murders and shit. So, but that's fine, whatever. I mean, at least in that regard, you're standing up for somebody's Miranda rights. So the rights to have what you call it, representation by a lawyer and by a defense attorney. Right to be silent and not have to give any information to the cops when they ask you, before and giving any kind of confessions. You have every right to do what you need to do to at least get a fair trial, essentially. And so but my point is that she could have taken any other kind of job. She's going out there and talking about how it's a tough job, or it's like a job where men are expected to be a certain way, so because I'm a woman, I got to be like the men, and I have to live up to their standards or their expectations. That's not true. Go out there, be in the job that you can handle. If you can't handle the job, then that's your problem. That's not everybody else's problem who has to suffer under your reign as Attorney General or DA, when you're going out there and charging them for crimes that they honestly shouldn't have even been charged for, and then putting them in jail for stupid reasons when it comes to selling or smoking marijuana or whatever it is, or any kind of drug. I mean, that's and largely a large part of them being black men, and maybe in some cases even black women. And she is not the kind of candidate that she's not turning out to be the kind of candidate that people expected. Now, before Tulsi Gabbard really called her out, I mean, she was kind of stagnant, but when Tulsi called her out, she's just in free fall mode now. So she's just going in a downward spiral. And this debate proved it. She did not do anything of value, didn't say anything of value in this debate. This question alone was terrible. Like I said, the one where she was called out for her prosecutorial record, it was made her look bad. I mean, she just doesn't have good responses for anything anymore. And it's interesting when people are talking about how she's this strong, kind of outspoken prosecutor, and I think she was shown for her, what did she do? She pressed, what's his name, Brett Kavanaugh, really strong. So when Brett Kavanaugh was going through his nomination process for getting onto the Supreme Court, she apparently nailed him because he was obviously being accused of sexual harassment and sexual abuse and stuff against one of the women, was it Christine Blasey Ford, and she apparently nailed him a lot on that. So I mean, she's good in those cases, but that doesn't mean you could go and become president, And that doesn't mean that necessarily Barack Obama is good, obviously, as president, as he wasn't a very good president when you look at him on a larger scale. And so, trying to go out there and get all these professors and lawyers and prosecutors and stuff like that kind of stuff doesn't fly. And the downfall of Kamala Harris, honestly, I think another good reason it's for is because of her arrogance. And like I said before, she's talking about how she's, I'm a top tier candidate, and I'm somebody that wants to be taken down by other candidates because they're totally jealous of where I am. I mean, that's classic arrogance from a politician that you don't want to see, and what turns people off from that kind of from that kind of essentially rhetoric. You don't want to hear somebody going out there and pretending that they're as if they're better than everybody. Now, if you go out there and say that my policies are better than X, Y, or Z candidates, that's a different story, and you explain why and you get into the details. That's fine, but that's not what Kamala Harris does. Kamala Harris goes out there and she pretends as if she is a tough prosecutor and thinks that that's like a big positive for her. She mentions Donald Trump a bunch of times because she wants to get a reaction out of him, and then when she doesn't end up getting the pop from the audience or the pop from the the advantage in the polls and stuff, she starts to kind of panic, and then she has to play damage control big time. And I think this debate was a big turning point for a lot of candidates, but it was an opportunity for a lot of them to make an impression on the audience and the electorate out there to try and get themselves noticed. And this was not a good showing for Kamala Harris. She did not get herself noticed. If anything, she hurt herself more. She's going to fade into the background even more, just like Amy Klobuchar is. I don't think she's going to fade into the background as fast as Amy Klobuchar. I do believe Kamala is probably going to make it to the next debate, but I wouldn't be surprised if she couldn't. It just kind of depends. I don't think she did. I don't think she was the biggest loser in this debate, but she was one of the bigger losers. With I think with her, Amy Klobuchar, Beto O'Rourke, I think, and one other person I forgot. But yeah, she was definitely one of the losers, and she demonstrated it with this question right here. And when it comes to free trade, she obviously has no idea what she's doing. She just wants to support whatever Barack Obama did, and she just wants to ride the coattails of the Democratic establishment because she is part of the Democratic establishment. She's somebody that Hillary Clinton even likes. So she's a classic neoliberal centrist corporate politician, and she wants to go out there and demonstrate that as much as possible, but she wants to pretend to do it with some sort of edge and some sort of strength, prosecutor strength, and that's not playing well with anybody, I guarantee it.